This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
I'm Roby Brock. Welcome to this edition of Talk Business and Politics. It was day 43 of the 93rd General Assembly, and lawmakers at the state capitol were busy with a variety of education bills and the controversial Senate Bill 24, the Stand Your Ground bill. The big news was the passage of Senate Bill 24. An amendment to make the bill more palatable to gun owners failed in committee. Local prosecutors were opposed to the amendment, but were neutral on the original Stand Your Ground bill. It cleared the House Judiciary Committee 10-9, the slimmest of margins. All 10 yes votes were Republican. All 9 no votes were Democrats. The bill's sponsor only needed 10 votes instead of 11 because Speaker Matthew Shepard sits on the Judiciary Committee. House rules state that when the Speaker is not in a committee meeting that he serves on, the threshold for passage reduces from 11 to 10. Shepard was absent from Tuesday's meeting. It now goes to the full House for consideration, where it will likely pass by a comfortable margin. The House Education Committee advanced a bill that would provide scholarships to fast-tracking medical school students. House Bill 1021 by Representative Joe Cloud would provide a $30,000 college scholarship for Arkansas residents who complete their undergraduate training in 2 years and have completed their first year at the state's 3 medical schools. The committee also advanced House Bill 1430 by Representative Mark Lowry, which would allow non-resident homeschooled students to participate in interscholastic activities without their resident district's approval if the activity is not offered by their resident school. Lawmakers voted against House Bill 1171 by Representative David Tollett, which would have allowed school choice students who transfer after the 10th grade to participate in sports immediately. They currently must wait 365 days to play and must obtain an athletic release from the district that they're leaving. And one final political note, State Treasurer Dennis Milligan, who is term limited, formally kicked off that his run for Auditor of State. He's announced previously that he'll run for that post. The current auditor, Andrea Lee, is term limited herself. After this break, I'll be joined by KATV's Maureen Glisovic. She's been covering some of these controversial bills in the session, and she was covering for us the Stand Your Ground bill debate today. We'll talk a little bit about the drama that went on there. And later, Representative Vivian Flowers, she's a member of the Legislative Black Caucus. They met yesterday with DHS Director Cindy Gillespie. What were Representative Flowers' takeaways? We'll find out after this. Talk Business and Politics is sponsored in part by Capital Advisors Group and...
You'll find us at the end of a lot of long country roads, covering over 60% of the great state of Arkansas. Our 17 electric distribution cooperatives are working day and night to provide reliable, affordable power to over 500,000 homes, farms, and businesses, just like yours. The Electric Cooperatives of Arkansas, your local energy partners.
They say an apple a day keeps the doctor away. But if you're looking for something more, Walmart has you covered. We provide quality care, no appointment necessary. Whether you're looking for fresh, healthy groceries to fill your prescription, get a flu shot, or pick up your next pair of glasses, we're standing by with in-store health professionals available across the country to offer patient-first, affordable care whenever you need it. Apples, optional.
Welcome back to the program. I'm joined now by Maureen Glisovic. She is KATV's senior political reporter. She also steers the 7 on Your Side team, and she is a Talk Business and Politics contributor. Maureen, good to see you.
Good to see you, Roby.
All right, let's talk about Stand Your Ground. That bill passed out of the House Judiciary Committee today, but there was lots of drama about it. Let's begin with talk about, there was an amendment that was going to be tried to put on the bill to please some of the gun owners out there and really make the bill more conservative in that respect, but it failed. Kind of give everybody a rundown of how that went down.
Well, when 3 weeks ago, Senate Bill 24 failed to get out of House Judiciary Committee, Representative Aaron Pilkington had mentioned that the hangup was the language of lawfully present. Some folks said that it didn't go far enough. They wanted to be the right to be here. So part of his amendment was defining lawfully present, which essentially said that as long as you're not committing any type of serious felonies by criminal trespassing, and those serious felonies listed including murder and rape, that he was trying to define that. What was interesting is that the Prosecutors Association had mentioned that they were neutral on Senate Bill 24, but they actually spoke against this amendment. And many lawmakers were questioning if it was just going to be confusing. They themselves didn't understand how he was trying to define lawfully present. And even some Republicans voted against that amendment. So then they moved on with just the initial Senate Bill 24.
So it goes back to its original status that had gotten through the state Senate and was down there in the House. And it's the same bill now that failed 3 weeks ago. What do you think was different this time around?
At this point, I don't know if there were numerous conversations had, but this has not changed. It's still the same bill. And so it ended up being passed on a voice vote, and a roll call was asked. And 10-9 is what this ended up passing out of the House Judiciary Committee. And also, of course, all 9 Democrats voted against this bill. And it now is going to head to the House floor for a full vote.
All right, expectations are that this bill probably passes easily in the House. There's 78 Republicans. It only needs 51 to pass. I predict it could come up later this week, I guess. So we'll probably see some action soon on this, correct?
And that's what, we can expect to see. I don't know why they would try to stall it. This has been a bill that both Senator Bob Ballinger and Representative Pilkington have just been trying to push through, get it done, and move on, is what they've said. Whether the governor signs it or allows it to become law, that has not been expressed just yet. We know that Governor Asa Hutchinson has been a supporter of strong gun laws such as those, but it's just undetermined whether he's going to sign it.
All right. She is Maureen Glisovic. She's senior political reporter for KATV. Always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you, Maureen.
Thanks, Roby.
All right. We're back with more right after this word from our sponsors. Talk Business and Politics is sponsored in part by Impact Management Group and
we have a large commitment to our solar for good reason. It lowers customers' rates. It's emissions free.
Entergy Arkansas is the largest provider of solar in the state of Arkansas.
Utility scale solar is much more economic for customers. We're going to operate it, we're going to maintain it, we're going to focus on it. That's what we do for a living.
We want to continue to find ways to partner with our customers to meet their renewable energy goals.
Customers want this, we want to provide it. So our commitment is for the long term.
Stepping into the unknown, it can be difficult to find the way. But with the compassion of the cross and the security of the shield, obstacles become openings. As we have for more than 65 years, we'll continue to light the way, using our knowledge to create new healthcare solutions, giving you the power to shine forward to whatever awaits tomorrow. Arkansas Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Live fearless.
joining me now is Representative Vivian Flowers, Democrat from Pine Bluff. Always good to be with her. Thank you so much for being with us, Representative Flowers.
Thank you. Great to be here with you, Roby.
Let's talk a little bit on Monday. The Black Caucus met with Cindy Gillespie, Governor Asa Hutchinson's Secretary of Health and Human Services. Tell me a little bit about that conversation. What did she? Why was she there? What did she bring to the table?
Well, the Legislative Black Caucus holds regular meetings weekly, and it's our opportunity to catch up with agencies and find out what's going on, hear their legislative agenda, present our issues as well. This is always an important meeting because of how huge that department is and the services they provide, whether you're talking about DCFS and our families, our most vulnerable families, or whether you're talking about Division of Youth Services and our most vulnerable youth in the state. So she reported a little bit about that, but I think what really sort of took up most of the conversation is what takes up most of our conversations, I think, in life these days, and that's the pandemic. So we talked about, she told us about the sort of status, the work status of the huge workforce that they have, and are they still working from home, and what all of that looks like. And, you know, I think just like the rest of the country, we're seeing some of the same thing. There are still DHS employees working virtually, but many of them have returned home with, you know, the safety protocols in place. Aside from that, I think also of great concern to us was what is happening with vaccination, especially with employees that that have direct care-based jobs and are in contact, with vulnerable people, sick people, youth, and people of color who we know are most disparately affected by the pandemic, especially when it comes to hospitalization and death.
I want to take a couple of pieces of some things that you've talked about there. Let's go strictly to pandemic relief and federal funding that's been coming down.
Yes.
Are you satisfied that that money is getting distributed where it should be distributed? Or because we read some things nationally that some of that is kind of bottlenecked some places.
So, no, we're not satisfied, but we also understand that it's an ongoing challenge to try to distribute those funds with some of the challenges that the agency itself has, because they're not in a place in terms of budget constraints for the agency in general, or in terms of what you're allowed to use those funds for, to just say, okay, we're going to run a radio ad and, spend this much on, social media advertising. So we actually talked about that during the meeting and afterward on how we can be creative so that we can keep our county offices and the Little Rock office in contact with those of us who are out in the counties, especially those of us who are in rural areas.
Vaccines, another big push that we're seeing, obviously, over the last several weeks. I think there was actually on Monday a big press conference to push vaccines through employers, Blue Cross Blue Shield leading the charge on some of that with the State Chamber of Commerce. But clearly, worker safety, these vaccines in the right places. Do you think that we've got the right priorities for getting the vaccine distributed? And again, what do you think in terms of the distribution of those vaccines? It's moving slower than we'd care for it to,
Yes.
but do you understand, are you satisfied with the explanation of why?
Not satisfied with where we are. I'm accepting and satisfied with the explanation, but I know we can do better. We certainly were challenged with, and I don't mean to be partisan, I'm just stating the facts, that with the presidential administration for whom that was not a priority, and that was not using all our resources to get it out. And even now with that, we were challenged out last week, with the snow, what did they call it? A snowpocalyptic, and everybody was sort of inside unless they, couldn't be. But that posed a huge detriment, coupled with, the issues in Pine Bluff. We're having, serious issues with water. And then, of course, what we see in Texas is an example of how some of these natural weather disasters can pose a threat to some of our most basic needs and actions. So, the issues are there, but I know that the will is there on the part of leadership federally and part of the leadership here. And I think a lot of the barriers that existed before no longer exist. And I think that we'll see a lot more improvement in terms of getting the vaccinations done throughout the state. And I would just add that in terms of our priorities, I know that there's a lot of conversation about reopening schools. And I think that in order to reopen schools, we have to make those vaccinations available to our teachers. I thought that we reopened too early. And as a result, we've seen teachers and superintendents be hospitalized, and some of them actually succumb to the virus. So I think before we do a broad-based reopening, we are going to have to make sure that our teachers are prioritized, as well as our citizens and our Kansans who are extremely vulnerable in the case of their physical wellness or disease.
Did Secretary Gillespie, or has the governor, maybe more directly to members of the legislature, have either one of them spoken to the fact about some of the hard to reach minority populations in the state? We've obviously seen African Americans, Latinos, Marshallese impacted at a much greater rate over the course of this pandemic. Did they speak to the efforts being made? And again, just did you hear the answers you were hoping to hear on what they're doing to address those hard to reach populations?
No, I didn't, but I think that the conversation is ongoing, and a lot of those conversations have been taking place prior to the limited time that we had in the caucus meeting today. And I know that Dr. Michelle Smith, for example, in the Department of Health has been working feverishly and really was very instrumental, for example, when Representative Ferguson, Holcomb, and myself were working along with Brian Thomas at JRMC to make sure that we got more doses coming to Jefferson County. We are one of the most impacted states when it comes to infection, hospitalization, and death. And our hospital, which really serves the entire southern region of the state, was not getting vaccinations. So they were, Dr. Smith was extremely helpful. And for Doctor's Orders, which was the only pharmacy with 2 locations serving our whole county, they were doing a yeoman's and yeowoman's job of doing that. But now the health department has expanded that reach for us by empowering other pharmacists to serve. And we had a clinic at the convention center in partnership with the city. That was awesome. We vaccinated 850 people in one day. And so I know what can be done. We can do better. And I'll just add one more thing.
Sure.
In addition to making it accessible, we have to do a better job of ensuring that people understand that the vaccinations are safe. We're dealing with, a history where, the government, whether it's federal or state, has not always been responsive and concerned about minority communities and our most vulnerable populations. And I think we have to make sure that the populations know that it's safe to do, that we're doing this. And Dr. Smith has been instrumental in doing that too. And I just wanted to give her, as well as Dr. Ramirez, their kudos for reaching out and hearing us when we were sounding the alarm.
All right, Representative Flowers, there's a lot going on at the state legislature, just a lot of activity up at the state capitol. You've got some of your own agenda items there as well. Give me one thing that we should be keeping our eyes on for something that may happen this week or in the very near future.
Well, that there was a lot of activity around the cost of prescription drugs, including the interim study that Representative Murdoch and Senator Rayford and I sponsored. And I think that you'll see some legislation come from that, and definitely this week and in the coming weeks.
All right, well, certainly something we'll keep our eyes on. She is Representative Vivian Flowers, Democrat of Pine Bluff. We appreciate her time, and thank you for being with us. And we thank you for being with us as well. That is all for today's edition of Talk Business and Politics. I'm Roby Brock. We'll see you next time.